Welcome, everyone. If we could take our seats, our program will begin shortly. Welcome, everybody. This side of the room is very quiet. Good job. We'll do the wave. Thank you. If I can have your attention. Could everyone please take your seat, get settled, and we'll get started. All right, thank you. Okay, this side of the room, you need to quiet down. That side of the room, you get extra drinks. Okay, yeah, see? Applaud yourself. All right, everybody, if I could have your attention, please. Sooner we quiet down, the sooner we can get started. And this room is so fabulous. Welcome to the Casino de Antigua. I think it's the most beautiful building in San Juan, and this is the most beautiful room in San Juan. So a lovely place and time to do our Hall of Fame and our Campaign Excellence Awards. The Hall of Fame is a bipartisan award that goes to the lions and the giants of our industry. People who have made a significant and huge impact over a span of their career to make the business of political consulting what it is today. If we could just keep quiet for a minute or two. The Campaign Excellence Awards are given each year in several categories to the most excellent campaign of that cycle. And we don't award these awards, the same awards every year, but instead, we pick the awards based on the kind of year it was, and 21 was a very interesting year. So, without further ado, let me first acknowledge and thank our sponsors because we would not be here without them. So, Playfly and Political Marketing and Media, thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. Thank you. So we're going to do this a little bit differently in that we're going to award some of our Campaign Excellence Awards, and then we will do Hall of Fame, and then some more Campaign Excellence Awards, et cetera. So just listen for your award if you are expecting to get one. So let me first introduce two board members, Ondine Fortune and Trey Richardson, who will be presenting our first awards of the evening. You may use my stool. Please come up.
All right.
Well, you first.
I think I'm first.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. So I would like to start. Dean and I would like to start with more or less public affairs awards. So tonight we're going to talk about local ballot measure campaign of the year first. This says a nonpartisan citizens group organized, raised money, and spent more than 2 years working to pass a measure to reverse effects of public camping ordinance that made unregulated open public camping lawful in nearly all spaces in Austin, Texas. They raised over $500,000 in 10 weeks, which has never actually been done before in Austin, Texas. And despite unanimous opposition from city leaders, the campaign won the election 58-42. Receiving our local ballot measure of the year award, please join me in congratulating Matt McCowiak with Save Austin Now and work on Proposition B.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trey. Should we take a photo?
I think she did.
Okay.
You're up.
Thank you all.
Well, Becky. Yeah, Becky's taking.
I'm very excited about presenting this award. This is the statewide ballot measure campaign of the year. This next campaign faced numerous challenges in their efforts to defeat a proposed 5% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana in Colorado. To start, they were outspent 24-1, and despite heavy opposition from Colorado public officials, they were able to identify key messages and distribute them to voters throughout the state. Through a grassroots effort, they defeated the measure by 9 points, surprising the politicians, the pundits, and the major foundations funding the opposing campaign. Receiving our statewide ballot measure campaign of the year award, please join me in congratulating the No on 119 campaign team, RBI Strategies and Research, Counterpoint Messaging, Keating Research, Consumer Research Association, John Britz, Karen Crummy, Chuck Smith, and the Cannabis Community for Fairness and Safety.
All right. Now back, Public Affairs Campaign of the Year. So America's leading beverage companies needed a unified platform with a commitment to reduce plastic waste and create a circular economy for plastic bottles. Through national television, digital, social, and out-of-home media, the campaign garnered 1.3 billion impressions, drove over 221,000 people to their website, and reached more than 70% of their target audience. This campaign has helped position the beverage industry as a serious, committed leaders in the goal to reduce plastic waste among public opinion leaders and consumers alike. So congratulations to the Public Affairs Campaign of the Year, GMMB, and the American Beverage Association for every bottle back. Get in there.
Independent Expenditure Campaign of the Year. The next winner is a locally organized, broad-based effort led by activists, labor unions, community leaders, and residents to engage voters and encourage them to elect leaders and enact changes that are consistent with Minneapolis' shared values and vision. This coalition helped re-elect Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and helped elect a city council majority that prioritized public safety. The group also spearheaded the successful No on Question 2 campaign that was put on the ballot by the Abolish the Police movement. Despite being outraised 3-1, voters vehemently rejected Question 2, and Mayor Jacob Frey was re-elected for a second term, receiving our Independent Expenditure Campaign of the Year award. Congratulations, Apparatus, GBC, and all of MPLS campaign. Oh, I have two. No. Are you sure? It's two. Oh, you're right. Okay. Excuse me. Democratic Campaign Manager of the Year, non-statewide. This individual served as campaign manager for one of the most watched and consequential local races in the country. The campaign was in uncharted territory on two major fronts. First, until the final few months of the race, all campaigns were run almost entirely virtually due to COVID restrictions. In addition, the 2021 primary was this city's first cycle of ranked choice voting, RCV. Despite these challenges, the campaign was widely described as well-run, dynamic, tight on messaging, and extremely disciplined. This individual is credited with keeping the campaign team running smoothly and efficiently through a brutally tough race. Please join me in congratulating our non-statewide Democratic Campaign Manager of the Year winner, Katie Moore, with the Eric Adams for Mayor campaign. Congratulations.
All right, last one for public affairs. So the campaign manager of the year, Republican non-statewide. This individual managed a race which garnered national attention for being the first campaign to beat a Trump-endorsed candidate in the special election. The endorsement from Trump appeared to propel his opponent to the top of the initial election. However, his campaign benefited from a more bipartisan appeal, coupled with a more positive, energetic campaign. This candidate was the top fundraiser throughout both the primary and the runoff, and with 53% of the vote, kept this district in challenging Dallas suburbs in Republican hands. For his work on the J. Kelsey for Congress campaign, please join me in congratulating our Republican Campaign Manager of the Year, Matt Brownfield. Unfortunately, Matt's not with us tonight, but we will, I don't think, Matt's not with us tonight. We'll do photo ops later. Thank you.
So this is a fun night. We look forward to this every Pollies. And we are going to award our first Hall of Fame inductee. And the synergy of the people involved here is just kind of fun. I'm going to introduce my friend and fellow board member, Sarah Fagan, who's going to make the next award presentation. But Sarah was the White House political director. And we have another White House political director with us this evening, so I love that you both are in the same room together. Sarah?
Thank you. Fun story, when I became political director, there was a desk in the old executive office building, and I remember that day thinking what an honor it was to sit in the same desk that Haley Barbour sat in. And I know we'll get to hear from you a little bit later, so it's a real privilege to be in the same audience with you tonight. Alex Gage. It's hard to think of someone who's had more impact on an industry of politics, and then also for me personally. Let me talk a little bit about his impact on the industry before I get to introduce this video. Very few people can say they actually created an industry. Alex Gage was one of them. Before Alex, if you think about, some of us are in this room have been doing politics long enough to remember that in this target states where there isn't registration by party, all direct contact was basically done by the precinct level. And when Alex came along and started to figure out how to dynamically match individuals and to start targeting individually, thinking about the field of micro-targeting, he literally changed the way that politics was conducted. He created an industry where now there are no less than a dozen firms, probably more by now, that work in the field of micro-targeting, data targeting, voter segmentation analysis. And we see these on the left and the right. We've seen them for direct mail. We now see them for everything related to video and television and everything in between. For me personally, it's a real privilege to get to introduce this video and ultimately you to his son Calder, because he changed my life. I was the associate director in the White House Office of Political Affairs in 2000, and Michigan was in my region. And Alex, a son of Michigan, took an interest in me and started to talk to me about micro-targeting and the importance of it and why we needed to do it in the 2004 campaign. And out of that experience, I've gotten a career, a second career. Used to be a political operative, now have built 2 successful data companies. That never would have happened but for my introduction to Alex Gage. So.
He looked so innocent. Alex Gage grew up to be what he called a data scientist. Data scientist? Really? Or was Alex Gage a mad scientist? This is never-before-seen footage from the Gage creation of micro-targeting.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Alex, how are you? It's been a long time. We've been friends for a long time. Look what I found down in the basement. The Michigan Micro Tactics Report. I remember when you first gave this to me and broke this down into 41 categories. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to keep track of 41 categories? I barely keep track of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents.
It's been a real honor to have the chance to call you both a friend and a colleague.
Since Alex Gage broke onto the political scene as a young advisor to Abraham Lincoln in 1860, he's been making a big difference in Republican campaigns.
No one can be happier than I am to see Alex receive this recognition. I'm especially excited that he can share it with people he respected so much.
The world, especially the world of politics, even more each of our personal worlds, are all richer because Alex Gage is a vital part of it.
Congratulations to you. I actually want to thank you for the contributions you've made to the Republican Party over the years. I guess it's been, more than 40 years since you've been crunching numbers back in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and you made some interesting discoveries, how to use big data and modern data to micro-target, and that has changed polling. More importantly, it's changed how we approach the electorate and how we win elections.
I think across the whole country, Republicans who've worked with you respect and admire all of the skills you've brought to so many political endeavors. Your insights and strategic judgment are respected by all.
You've really been one of the most influential figures in politics, certainly in this century and for many, many years.
Gage gets his share of credit for advancing public polling and market research, but he doesn't really get his fair share and enough credit for attracting, training, and mentoring the dozens of staffers and colleagues that will carry on his legacy of caring and excellence well into the future.
A few things stand out to me about Alex. His curiosity. He had this playfulness with data that was just contagious. His innovation. He was always asking, what's next? How can we use it to do our jobs better?
What really set Alex apart from the many, many people I've met over the years is just such a sincere, nice human being.
You're not a guy who was grandstanding and trying to take credit for stuff, but instead you've approached campaigns and campaigning the way you've approached your life, which is a humble guy that gets the thing done.
In this increasingly bitter business, a person of great decency, kindness, compassion, generosity, honor, and loyalty.
Alex has always taken the opportunity to help other young operatives move up, and there are generations of them in the Republican Party today who owe Alex a big debt for opening a door and making a phone call.
It was so thrilling to hear him say to you as you walked by, hey, take a look at this. He'd hand a question to anyone willing to do the work. And he'd push you, he'd prod you, he'd react to what you got, he'd steer you in a productive direction. And if you found something, it was yours. In a business that typically doesn't do it, he lifted people up. He's unafraid of sharing or giving credit to others. In fact, you could tell it really gave him pride to see the people who worked for him doing well.
Cynthia and I wish our very best, warmest, deep regards and affection for my dear friend Alex Gage. Have a fun evening.
As you gather with your friends tonight, know that two of your friends and admirers are thinking of you and wishing you all the best.
I'm proud to call you my friend. Thanks, Alex, for a job well done.
He was such a good person and is so deserving of receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. So kudos to Alex Gage.
And just want to say congratulations to Alex for officially joining the pantheon of political greats.
Alex is not only a politician who made good, he is a man who has done good.
Everything that Alex has done, everything that you've done, Alex, has been done with vision and hard work and creativity, grace, and probably most important of all, good humor. Thank you, man. We love you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Alex, for everything you've done for me and for so many people in this business.
And I appreciate your character, your integrity, your commitment to the craft that you have helped pioneer, and wish you the very best in the next phase of life. Congratulations and all the best to you. Bye-bye.
It is my distinct honor to present this award to Alex's son, Calder Gage.
Some can see the resemblance. It is with great honor that my family and I accept this Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of our father, Alexander Patton Gage. We thank you for acknowledging his pioneering work in survey research. My father would always say that he is not a survey researcher, or he's not a consultant or advisor, but a survey researcher. He truly believes the power of survey research and the importance of understanding public opinion. I only wish that he could be here tonight to look out on the faces and the friends and colleagues who he respected so much. I want to thank those who he worked with during his career, from his time in Michigan with market opinion research and market strategies, to his time in DC with Target Point Consulting and Deep Root Analytics. In addition to those, the colleagues and friends he made during his 9 GOP presidential campaigns and countless governor and Senate races. So many great memories over the years, from his barbecues in Alexandria with the Target Point staff, to the Lobster Fest we had in Vermont with the Romney campaign. For him, work was more about just delivering results. It always loved bringing the team together to laugh and bond and build lasting relationships. I've always admired my father. I remember even as a little kid staying up watching hockey with him and seeing graphs of paper with numbers flying in the air. When he was in the process of bringing micro-targeting to life, he was spending a lot of time in Vermont. I recall going to his office on the 2nd floor of the stone cottage. It indeed looked like a mad scientist lab. Pictures that looked like DNA strands, papers everywhere, charts, graphs, and lots of old clip art. My dad was an innovator. He always believed there were new, better ways to measure public opinion and conduct survey research. Better methodologies, mediums, and political tactics. And he continued to innovate until his retirement. I admire all these things, but nothing more than how he treated his employees. He truly loved seeing them in their careers. I remember being at Target Point when one of his favorite employees decided to leave. I asked him if he was upset he was leaving. He said, no, that means we did our job. We helped him move forward. Anyone who knows my father knows that focusing did not come easy. He had to overcome that every day. However, the love of survey research drove him to succeed. He worked hard at that every day, and today that has undoubtedly paid off. I would like to thank the AAPC board for this tremendous honor, Alana Joyce for encouraging me to come here tonight, and Becca Donatelli for encouraging me to come here as well. I would also like to thank Interface Media Group for this amazing video they put together. Bannon, Melissa, and Aaron, you guys have been a breeze to work with, and I'm very, very grateful. Lastly, I would like to thank Sarah Fagan for being here tonight. Now, more importantly, for being a constant friend and an advocate to my father. My father was my hero, mentor, and best friend. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight to accept this honor due to health concerns. I can't wait to bring this back to him, to his home in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, to see the smile on his face. This award means the world to me and our family, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You know, when we look at you, Calder, we are seeing your dad. It is so wonderful to have you here, and please tell him how much we all love and miss him. So, on to our next round of Campaign Excellence Awards. And again, this room is very, very sound bouncy, so if we could really all try to just hold down the conversation for a minute, that would be great. So, I would like to introduce 2 more of our board members for the next round of awards, Jamie Saxton and Betsy Ankney.
Hi, folks. My first award that I will announce is the Democratic Fundraiser of the Year. Our next winner contributed to multiple campaigns with innovative and exciting ways to fundraise virtually and in person. We all know making Zoom events fun can be challenging with ideas like virtual wine and beer tastings, pets in politics, an ugly sweater contest, and even an occasional concert from Joe Walsh or Jason Isbell. Our next winner broke the mold and established new ways of engaging with voters and fundraising for political candidates in a tough environment. Receiving our Democratic Fundraiser of the Year award, please join me in congratulating Dynamic SRG for their work on the campaigns of the borough presidents of both Manhattan and Queens, and Adrian Adams for Speaker of the New York City Council.
Okay, and now on to Republican Fundraiser of the Year. In 2021, a gubernatorial candidate decided 9 weeks before an election to jump in the race with $0, zero organization, hoping his name ID and conservative philosophy would draw new donors to his campaign. In 9 weeks, his team was able to raise nearly $23 million, nearly a quarter of which came from digital fundraising. When this candidate's finance director started, she had no staff except for a few interns. She went on to manage 26 events up and down the state. She hired 3 digital firms to fundraise across email, RevShare, text, social media, and digital advertising, and the effects were immediate. Receiving our Republican Fundraiser of the Year, Jennifer Ortiz-Alziri, Campaign Solutions, CDI Ads, and Winning Tuesday for their work on the Larry Elder for Governor campaign.
Okay, folks, now we're going to move on to the Digital Campaign of the Year on the Democratic side. This campaign built the largest distributed organizing campaign ever by a non-presidential campaign and broke records for actions and engagement. They ran a digital persuasion campaign in multiple languages focused on highest yield platforms, which alone reached 13.4 million Californians and persuaded 1.8 million people to consider voting with them. Between late July and early September, the LA Times reported a 22-point shift in the percentages of Dems expressing a high interest in voting. Receiving the Digital Campaign of the Year award, congratulations to the Stop the Republican Recall of Gavin Newsom campaign, spearheaded by Ace Smith, Juan Rodriguez, and Sean Clegg with Bear Star Strategies, and Tim Tigueras and Sidney Hibbs with Aisle 518 Strategies. Hey, Juan, don't go too far, okay? Okay, now for the Democratic Campaign Manager of the Year statewide. Beyond brilliant digital strategy, the Newsom campaign benefited from expert strategic leadership. The campaign raised $14.6 million and over 500,000 donations. They built the largest distributed organizing campaign in state history with nearly 10,000 volunteers in Slack and 22,000 additional volunteer signups. They pushed a staggering 46 million text messages. They made more than 33 million phone calls and knocked on 1.5 million doors over the course of the campaign. In doing so, they were able to drive up Democrats' interest in voting by 22 points to bridge a massive partisan enthusiasm gap. This year's Democratic Campaign Manager of the Year statewide goes to Juan Rodriguez for his work on the Stop the Republican Recall of Gavin Newsom campaign.
And now for Republican Campaign Manager of the Year statewide. In 2021, a well-established two-term incumbent was running for Attorney General in a state that had voted for Joe Biden by 10 points. Nearly every political rating listed this race as lean D or likely D. As the campaign manager for the entire campaign, which happened to be the only campaign manager who was in that position for the entire cycle, from beginning to end. This individual stayed organized, on message, and focused despite having a small staff and limited resources. His candidate became the first Hispanic to be elected statewide, the first son of an immigrant elected as Attorney General, and the first challenger to defeat an incumbent Attorney General in the state since 1885. For his work on the Jason Miyares for Virginia Attorney General campaign, please congratulate Clark Kilgore for Campaign Manager of the Year.
All right, I am up. Electing presidents and US senators, fundamentally changing media strategy, and just political consulting overall. Mandy Grunwald had done all of this before I worked with her early on in my firm's existence. I was really excited to work with her because, well, she's a badass. But the client was a tough one, and as many are, and it was exacerbated by 6 a.m. conference calls because no one cares about Californians when they schedule conference calls. Yet I look forward to these calls, right? 6 a.m., I went down in my basement. It was dark, not the cutest look, but I look forward to it because I got to learn from Mandy. As I mentioned, the candidate was not easy. And Mandy would just drop sage advice on the regular, all the time, no matter the ups and downs of the clients, but also with a level of equanimity that I found astounding. Never raising her voice. And if you know Mandy, Mandy has a style, and it's great. You pay attention, right? She's one of those folks where it's like, okay, I need to shut up and listen. But she did it with a steadiness and calm the campaign just really needed. On that campaign, Mandy was mentoring me, whether she knew it or not. You see, I would not be considered even-tempered. And Mandy helped me figure out how to help the client and the campaign and do my best to help them win. And, of course, we won. And I could keep counting Mandy's wins, and that would be enough. That would be enough and reason enough to give her this award. But I also think of the time since that first campaign where Mandy has given her time to help me navigate the consulting world, adjust to the ever-changing political landscape, and just to get the campaign to listen to the digital dude just a little bit more. I thank you, Mandy, for that kindness, and to me personally. And I want to thank you for helping change the world to be a better place, especially for a kid like me. And, that's what we do. I was born in a refugee camp in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, so there's this alignment here also, if you know Mandy's history. And so it's really an honor to do this, and I want to thank Mandy for changing the world, and I want to thank her for doing it with class, grace, and generosity. And I've said enough. Let's roll the video.
As I was just starting out as a fundraiser in the party, there was one woman who stood out to all of us trying to find our way.
I was a 23-year-old kid from a small town who loved politics and needed a job. I was lucky enough to have Mandy Grunwald as a boss for 3 years. She stood up for herself, her ideas, her clients, and her staff, almost always as the only woman in the room.
Mandy Grunwald broke through one hell of a glass ceiling. She did it her own way.
She built the most successful woman-owned media consulting business ever. Ever.
Mandy has elected some of the greatest leaders that this party has. Particularly women, but not only women, and we're all better off for it.
Mandy is the best in the business, simply the best.
She is brilliant. She is unflappable.
But do not cross her. That's a mistake.
She has such clarity of message.
Mandy is whip smart. She is kind. And yeah, she is persistent.
Piercing intellect.
Savvy, forward-looking, and unstoppable.
Tough and fearless.
She's just one hell of a person to consult.
Can I go negative? Mandy says sometimes it's best to go negative.
When I first started talking to people about running, I had about 1 million conversations in which people said the same thing. Oh, you should definitely run. You'll lose, but you should definitely run. Well, Mandy had a different view. Her view was run and win.
Mandy had some really great insights in terms of how I should tell my own story, because my mother had an addiction to prescription drugs. And it was the most powerful ad I have ever seen.
I'll always be grateful for all the great work Mandy has done for Hillary and for me. People thought our campaign was nuts when I went on late night shows and played my saxophone. She was way ahead of the curve when it came to non-traditional campaigning.
Your invaluable expertise and experience and dogged determination during my 2000 Senate race and 2 presidential campaigns has been incredible to me. It has been such a privilege to have you by my side.
Mandy is innovative, creative, and a talent powerhouse that helps so many of we women get to the House and to the Senate.
One of the best decisions in my political career was asking Mandy to do the media for my 1996 campaign for governor when I was elected the first woman governor of New Hampshire. She then did 7 campaigns for me. That's got to be a record in New Hampshire.
I would not have won my first race without you. I won by 312 votes. And thank you, Mandy, for making my career possible.
I've been lucky enough to have Mandy work for me on 9 campaigns. And when she's with you 1,000%.
This is John Hickenlooper, U.S. Senator from Colorado, because of Mandy Grunwald. She is whip smart, tougher than nails, and brutally honest. She's also probably the best advisor that I've ever had on a campaign.
In 2004, when no one thought that the U.S. Senate could be won by a Democrat, you came in and guided me to victory. I call you my sister because you are. And just your heart is what makes you such a wonderful person.
She's the person you want with you when you go into battle, and the person you want to keep close afterward. Because as talented and gifted as she is as a professional, if you're fortunate, she becomes a really trusted and treasured friend, as she has been to Cynthia and me.
You are an inspiration to so many women, including me.
Her career is the one that had paved the way for so many women. Thank you for all you've done for me and honestly for women in politics.
You're the best strategist I've ever met. And it's been a privilege to work with you and share clients in a business where sharing is not in vogue.
I don't think that there's been a week in my life that I haven't spoken to Mandy multiple times. I can't think of anybody whose counsel and advice that I rely on more.
And thank you for the incredible work you've done to make democratic politics more inclusive, more fair, more fun, and to help more women win.
Thank you for what you've done to elect incredible people, and I'm here talking about my friends, to be our friend through the good times and the bad. I am so glad to have you in my corner.
There are two people in my home who will always feel eternal gratitude.
Mandy, congratulations to you. I want you to understand one thing. Benjamin is going to see this, and your boy is going to know that his mom was one kick-ass political operative, maybe the most kick-ass ever.
It is my honor and privilege to award the Democratic AAPC Hall of Fame Award to Mandy Grunwald.
Wow, kind of overwhelming. Thank you to the AAPC. Thank you, Becky, for this honor and for everything you do as an organization. Larry, thank you. That was so sweet. It was a lovely introduction. Congratulations to Alex Gage and to Haley Barbour. But I have to have my team stand up who made that incredible video. Chris Kepferly, Carrie Lamson, Noah Orner, stand up. Carrie and Chris have worked with me for 20 years and they're best in the business. And while you're looking over there, there's my son, Ben Cooper. Thank you for coming with me tonight. Somehow I've had a great career and a great kid. I don't know how I got so lucky. I've been thinking a lot about the first AAPC conference I can remember. I think it was in New York City long ago. I was working for my first boss, David Sawyer, a real pioneer in the business. There are about 2 of you who were around to remember him. And we were located in New York, so our firm and the leading Republican firm in the city were asked to help host. The leading Republican firm was a guy named Roger Ailes. Well, in the usual way, David and Roger had the young women in their company do all the work. That was me for David and a woman named Kathy Ardley, who many of you probably know, for Roger. After the conference was over, I ran into Roger in the hallway of the hotel. He thanked me for all my hard work, but then he said something I never forgot. Roger Ailes looked at me and he said, "I don't know what it's like with you Democrats, but no woman's ever gonna make it in this business." So tonight, on behalf of all the women who've ever been underestimated, all of us, I'm really proud to join the AAPC Hall of Fame. And I'm delighted to be here with people who love politics, because let's be honest, we all know that most Americans hate politics. I think most of us, however, work in this field, Democrats and Republicans, because we believe politics can be a force for good and a force for change. And as much as I love winning elections, and yeah, I love winning elections, my work has never been just about winning. It's been about helping put people in office who can make a difference for others. You can't be a political consultant without wrestling with some pretty brutal realities most days of the week. But at heart, I'm an optimist. And being an optimist has allowed me to prove Roger Ailes wrong. It's also allowed me to help get some amazing people elected and to watch them do amazing things. As I'm looking backwards, I'm thinking about Daniel Patrick Moynihan saving Social Security with Bob Dole. I'm thinking about Paul Wellstone fighting for mental health parity when no one knew what that was. And Bill Clinton, as James Carville always says, what didn't you like, the peace or the prosperity? But as you know, a great deal of my energy has been devoted to helping women get the chance to do amazing things. When I was starting out, there were virtually no women in statewide office and very few female consultants. Election nights, there was always a moment in the hotel suite when the candidate, always a man, would say, "I gotta go get changed." And the guys I worked with would follow him into the bedroom, and the door would close in my face, and I'd be cooling my heels in the living room. That changed for me in 1984 when we were working for a congresswoman named Jerry Ferraro, who wound up being the first female vice presidential nominee. In her suite at the Democratic Convention, when it was time to get ready for her speech, she looked at me and told me, "Come on in, I gotta get ready." And I was on the inside and the door closed on the guys. And oh, I love that. It was my first glimpse of how the things could change. Here's the amazing thing. That night, we had obviously never had a female president or vice president. There had also never been a Democratic woman elected to the United States Senate in her own right. This is just 38 years ago. 38 years ago, and there had never been a Democratic woman elected to the Senate. And there was just one female Democratic governor at the time. So the entire history of women serving as governor and senator elected in their own right, it's just a few decades old. And I've been so lucky to be a little part of that history. You know, at the beginning, the questions women got asked were ridiculous. Could they understand the military, the federal budget? Were they tough enough to run a state? Were they maybe a little too emotional, too hysterical, particularly at certain times of the month? Seriously. Most of that is gone now, but not all of it. Every woman I've worked for has had her clothes and looks reviewed by the press. Everyone has dealt with sexist attacks. We had one opponent who called my candidate princess. Every one of my candidates has been told she couldn't win, and every one of them wound up being the first at something. The first woman I helped elect statewide was Barbour Roberts, the first governor of Oregon in 1990. Then Jeanne Shaheen, governor of New Hampshire in 96, and its first female senator a little while later. Amy Klobuchar, the first female senator of Minnesota. Hillary Clinton, the first in New York. Elizabeth Warren, the first in Massachusetts. Tammy Baldwin, the first in Wisconsin, and the first openly LGBTQ senator in American history. And think about what a difference all those women made. That's what matters. It took Barbara Mikulski becoming a senator to force the National Institute of Health to do medical research for women instead of just on men the way they had been for decades. It took Jeanne Shaheen becoming governor to get rid of a 100-year-old abortion ban that locked up women and doctors, a ban, by the way, that would be going into effect next month if Roe is overturned. But Jeanne Shaheen got rid of that ban. It took Tammy Baldwin as a senator to make sure that young people could stay on their parents' health care plan till they're 26. Millions of young people have benefited from that. And despite all that great work and great progress, as we stand here tonight, there are a couple dozen states that have never elected a woman governor or senator. I guess the good news is that means I've got more work to do. But so do many of you in this room, because look around, I'm not the only woman consultant anymore. Now there are so many more female pollsters and campaign managers and fundraisers and direct mail consultants and digital experts and yes, media consultants. So I've seen a lot change, and I expect to see a lot more. Yes, we live in a time when people hate politics. Yes, the weaponizing of lies, the explosion of hatred is uglier and frankly more frightening than it's ever been. Yes, people hate most of our leaders, and they certainly hate political ads. But you know what? I love the people I've worked for, the women and the men. By and large, I've found them to be brilliant, compassionate, and in this for all the right reasons. I've also loved the people I've worked with, partners, mentors, co-conspirators. As everyone in this room knows, this business attracts some of the most interesting characters in our country to some of the most interesting work. And I've also loved the America I've been fortunate to see, the factories and farms where I film, the fundamental decency and heart of the people, the opportunity to see so much of this country and get an education in America that's frankly rare for someone from New York City. So despite the divisiveness of our current politics, I'm still an optimist. I'm still a romantic about politics. I still believe it can be a force good and a whole lot of fun too. Thank you again for this terrific honor.
I'd like to welcome Kyle Roberts and Rebecca Piercy to the stage for our next set of awards. Thank y'all. By the way, Saul doesn't say that many nice things about anyone in that short amount of time, so that's a win.
Hi. Good evening. That was not good. Good evening. Come on. Okay. So, in Atlanta, this next campaign built a racially and geographically diverse coalition of voters, a stunning defeat for any candidate who, just a few months prior, was polling in single digits and whose name recognition was under 30%. The campaign grew its army of door-to-door canvassers and volunteers making phone calls and sending text messages to encourage voter turnout. Overall, it was the strategic and financial discipline of these individuals we're about to name that resulted in a candidate initially perceived as unviable, and then placing second in an open seat general election by only about 600 votes. And I feel like we've all been there, so we're all just like, oh, they won. That's great. And then pivoting to win the runoff with receiving 64% of the vote. Receiving the Democratic MVP of the Year award for their work on the Andre Dickens for Mayor campaign in Atlanta, please join me in welcoming and congratulating Kendra Sue Derby, Howard Franklin, and Candace Franklin.
Congratulations. All right, we're now on to the MVP of the year for the Republicans. So our 2022 GOP MVP of the year has been called a five-tool political athlete who works hard, really hard, first in, last out hard. During the Youngkin campaign, she worked so hard, she had walking pneumonia twice. She understands data, not just polling, not just analytics, but metrics, how to apply them, how to measure them, and how to utilize them. She understands scripts, narratives, campaign message arc, and she knows when to attack, when to retreat, and where to pick her battles. She knows the landscape and how to message to voters. She's great at managing teams and getting the right person at the right time on the right bus. She gets the most out of the A team, the B team, and the All-Stars. Lastly, she can manage candidates from veteran congressmen to first-time candidates because she has grace and a steely-eyed determination that gives them confidence to follow her direction, advice, and counsel. For her work on the 2021 Youngkin for Governor campaign, please join me in congratulating Kristen Davison for AAPC's GOP MVP of the Year.
The next campaign faced a highly competitive Democratic primary field in New York City's first ranked choice voting mayoral election, the most high-profile ranked choice voting elections in American history. Building on years of experience in ranked choice voting elections in California and elsewhere, this team refined a survey methodology that proved highly predictive and instructive in this race. From the very beginning, though, they developed the candidate honed a message that balanced a commitment to public safety, police accountability, and crime prevention and intervention that uniquely met the political moment. Through their work, The candidate won the primary and general elections to become New York City's first black mayor in 29 years, receiving our Democratic Pollster of the Year award for their work on the Eric Adams for New York City campaign. Please congratulate Ben Tolchin, Ben Krompak, and Corey Teeter with Tolchin Research.
Okay, so up next, we're going to the Republican Pollster of the Year. So we'll present this award for Republican Pollster of the Year. This year's winner developed polls, created models, tested messaging themes, and built key audience segments for a very tough and brutal campaign. Deep data analytics revealed that education was the winning issue, and the response from the ground indicated that it was working. And it was a combination of accurate polling, message analytics, audience activation, and ad exposure measurement that put this campaign on the path to success. Receiving our Republican Pollster of the Year award for their work on the Youngkin for Governor campaign, please join me in congratulating Chris Wilson, Amanda Iovino from WPAI, and BJ Martino and Dave Sackett from the Terrence Group. Okay, this is the final award of the night, and then we're going to go to our last Hall of Fame inductee. So our final award is for Campaign of the Year. And this award is given only to one party, so it is the top campaign of the year that gets it. It's the most prestigious. And we're on a little bit of a theme tonight, I think you'll notice. Our final award recognizes cross-discipline excellence in a candidate campaign. This campaign was widely viewed as an upset in 2021. It was a victory that required immensely nuanced communication skills in all areas of the campaign, from paid media to earned media. This campaign was never expected to win a primary, let alone the general election. They faced enormous headwinds. It was a state that Trump lost by 10 points. He was a brand new candidate with virtually no name ID, and he was up against a pretty powerful Democrat machine. Despite the challenges, the campaign engineered a strategy that resulted in a 2-point victory. It was a victory bigger than the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it spawned a movement around the country. It is largely seen as a template for other Republican races as we head into the 2022 midterms. Receiving the Campaign of the Year, Award of the Year, is the Youngkin for Governor campaign, and here tonight to receive that award is Danny Laub and Amanda Iovino. You're welcome. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay, now we're moving to the last segment of the presentation. Closed out with the awards, we're going to our last Hall of Fame inductee. And I'm very proud to introduce our next presenter. Some people call him a one-man wrecking ball. I think that's a bit of an understatement, actually. He's definitely the GOP's secret weapon. He's an AAPC board member and a very good friend, and I'd like to welcome Ward Baker to the stage.
A wise man once said, "Keep the main thing the main thing." And it's with that spirit, I'll get straight into the point. And then I'm honored to introduce a true leader who has had a significant and lasting impact on our industry, our party, and our nation. Every year, the AAPC inducts those who serve as an example of leadership and accomplishment into the Hall of Fame. And I can think of no better person who fits that criteria better than Haley Barbour. He's played a major role in our party for more than 50 years, even serving as political director in the Reagan's White House. But he is perhaps best known for managing the RNC during the 1994 Republican Revolution that gave the GOP control over both houses of Congress for the first time in 40 years. For many, cheering the RNC and making such a historic stride would be the peak of their career, time to hang up the hat, but not for Haley Barbour. Haley was called to serve the great people of his home state of Mississippi. He was elected and re-elected as governor, driving historic economic development and wage growth, but also leading his beloved state through the natural disaster that was Hurricane Katrina. And today, he continues to improve workforce development through the Haley Barbour Center for Manufacturing Excellence. But even that wasn't enough for a man who has always given the most of himself. He chaired the Republican Governors Association, and he helped them with his historic gains in 2010 election, ushering in a wave of thoughtful Republican executives like himself, whose leadership benefited their states. It's no accident that the two biggest Republican waves of the last 30 years have happened at Haley at the helm. Tonight, we are here to pay tribute to Haley's career, but I would be remiss if I did not mention what an incredible father and grandfather he is. What a good friend and mentor he has been to so many in our party, so many in this room, and to myself included. I could never pay Haley back for what a mentor he's been to me and to so many others. Haley has always prioritized helping younger people, and there are countless operatives and leaders on our side of the aisle who are fortunate to be part of the Haley Barbour tree. And so while I could stand here all evening talking his many accomplishments, it's impossible to truly define his impact, because without him, our party, frankly, our country would not be the same as it is today. We are better off today because of Haley Barbour. Governor, I thank you for all you've done and all you continue to do. Right now, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll keep the main thing the main thing. Thank you, Governor.
I think Haley's big impact on politics, besides being married to Marcia for so many years and having a real life partner, is that he's taught everybody that policy goes with politics. And there are dozens, hundreds of operatives around the country right now in campaigns that are saying to themselves when faced with a dilemma, what would Haley do in this situation? And I really think that's the impact he's had on generations of Republican operatives.
But he not only was able to give great advice to candidates, but become a successful one himself, not only able to give sound counsel to office holders at all levels, but to become an effective office holder himself.
The 63rd governor of the state of Mississippi, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, one of the nation's most respected strategists, Haley Barbour. But his story doesn't begin in Washington. It starts in Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Yeah, so Yazoo City is in the South Delta. It's the gateway to the Delta. It's where the hills and the flatlands of the Delta meet. There's no question Haley was the most political person in the family. My dad loved local politics. Haley loved it all. When my dad ran for mayor when he was 27, mayor of Yazoo City, Haley got involved in the campaign. He was a junior at Ole Miss. That's what got Haley interested in politics. And that fall, or heading into that fall, my dad mentioned to Haley, Nixon campaign's looking for field reps, and the rest is history.
Haley understood what it would take to build a Republican Party in the state of Mississippi, and he set out to do it from an early age.
Haley went from there to working for presidential campaigns, and then of course he decided to run for the Senate in 1982.
Stennis was 82 and Haley was 34. It was a good campaign, but it was early in Mississippi Republican politics. It just wasn't a good time to do it, to challenge Stennis.
Losing a Senate campaign didn't end Haley Barbour's career. It didn't even hurt it. He'd impressed Jim Baker as one of the South's top operatives. and Baker brought him to the Reagan White House.
There's an old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And in campaigning for public office, there's an addendum to that bromide. Keep the politicos even closer than that. I know this firsthand because I kept Haley Barbour as close to me as I could for as long as I could.
He brought Haley Barbour's persona to the White House. There was no question about it. We had a giant liquor cabinet. We had regular social events. Our motto was ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
And I ended up working in the last year of the Reagan administration. They would still talk about, well, Haley would say this, or Haley, he's been gone for 5 years, but he made a big dent on everybody there. He pretty much, makes a big mark wherever he goes.
I remember I was the head of the census, as some of you Mississippi people know, back in 1970, and it gave me a real lesson in understanding and making clear, knowing what you're doing. When it had written in there, one of the questions was number of employees broken down by sex. And this fellow scribbled in beside it, he wrote by number of employees broken down by sex. He said, none broken down by sex, but I do have two with a drinking problem.
Everybody has a favorite Haleyism. There's too many to count. I have my own. The bar is always open at BGR.
If you're ever in a hole, the first thing you need to do is to stop digging.
Democrats were running from Bill Clinton like scalded dogs about that time.
I always liked when he would just say that something strong as an acre of garlic.
If you sit down at the poker table and can't spot the mark, it's you.
Here's a guy that can spend $100 million of his own money on this election. That's enough money to burn a wet mule.
Looks at him, he goes, I taught this boy everything he knows, but I didn't teach him everything I know.
There's no such thing as a bad short speech.
He became political director at the White House under Reagan and obviously met all sorts of people, and that's just sort of when he got the full-on Potomac fever.
When I left the Bush White House, we started Barbour and Rogers, attorneys at law. It didn't take us long to figure out we weren't very good lawyers. Then we figured out we're not really lawyers at all. So we were just going to do this consulting, lobbying gig until we figured out what we were really going to do with our lives. And that was 32 years ago.
I've been at BGR for almost 21 years now. When Haley gets on a roll, his clients look at him in awe. He's a political genius. He's funny. He's affable. And all of our clients really do hang on every word that he says, and for good reason.
We like to say it's a good thing that we founded this firm because the people that work there would never hire us.
But building a successful government relations firm in D.C. wasn't enough for Haley Barbour. After Bill Clinton won the White House in 1992, Haley set out to rebuild the entire Republican Party.
You may know in that 1993 chairman's race, he won on the third ballot against two other men that went on to both serve in the U.S. Senate.
Haley's attitude was, this thing's over. Beating these guys isn't going to be any problem. And of course, he was right.
When Haley Barbour became chairman of the party, I remember as a young operative watching them put a TV studio in the basement of the RNC. And they created this product that ran on national television called GOP TV. And of course, their anchorman for this Republican newscast was this guy with the southern drawl named Haley Barbour.
Good evening, I'm Haley Barbour. Welcome to GOP TV's Rising Tide.
And it was a revolutionary thing at the time, but Haley's always kind of been ahead of his time.
The Republican National Committee is very proud to support the Republican contract with America.
Haley Barbour was the one who sat down with Newt Gingrich and said, I will make sure as a national Republican chairman that he gets paid for. And that's how the contract with America came to be.
So recruiting candidates was very important and giving them something to say. The contract with America was key. It was 10 really good ideas, and our point to candidates was just pick 2 or 3. All you need is 2 or 3 and go run on them. And it was part of the success of Newt becoming Speaker and really changing the direction of the party.
Not a single Republican incumbent in the House, in the Senate, or governor was defeated yesterday.
Haley Barbour is one of the smartest politicians I've ever met. We've known each other now going back to the 1980s. I've always admired his work. He was a key, absolute key, to our becoming a majority in 1994. He's been remarkable as a party leader, as a governor, as somebody who really thinks deeply about and loves the future of America and thinks it's important that we work together.
There was no incumbent Republican in the U.S. House of Representatives that had ever served in the majority. The closest we had was someone who had served as a page during the last years of the Republican majority.
Either everybody's going to have to calm down or we'll close the bar. You've got every right to have just as much fun because this is as great a night as I've seen in Washington. And I will tell you the lasting effects of this and what's about to happen will be even greater for our country and for our children's future.
There's something about Haley that distinguished him from many of the others. Very few have been able to navigate at the intersection of politics and policy as effectively as Haley. As evidence of that, look no further than his legacy as a two-term governor of Mississippi. His opponents quickly learned that though he may have a voice as smooth as Southern bourbon, he's as tough as Mississippi hardwood.
Haley decided he wanted to run for governor in 2003 and take on Ronnie Musgrove. He saw Musgrove as weak. He wanted to give, quote, strong leadership a chance. That was kind of Haley's pitch. Musgrove campaign was essentially all negative for about 6 weeks in the fall, where they tried to turn Haley into somebody from D.C., from out of state, who doesn't know us. Meanwhile, Haley's talking like this, and it was a huge hit.
You never got the one-up on Haley Barbour.
In the poll we did in the days after the election in 2003, there was a shockingly high number of people who said that the reason they voted for Haley is because they'd met him. It was physically impossible for the number of people who said that they'd met Haley in 2003 to have actually done so. But I think that spoke to the type of campaign he ran, and it was his campaign.
When Haley ran for office in 2003 and won the governorship, everybody knew he was going to be great politically. Everybody knew he was going to be a great politician. What Hurricane Katrina did a year and a half into his tenure is it showed everyone what kind of a leader Haley Barbour was.
You know, many have said that Haley being the governor of Mississippi in that moment was divine intervention. I believe that myself. I saw it with my own eyes. All those relationships he had developed as a lobbyist, his deep knowledge of how to get people aligned in Washington around a goal, it all came to fruition.
But the truth of the matter is, the person who deserves the biggest compliment in my judgment is the man who brought the will of the Mississippi people, the needs of the Mississippi people up to Washington, D.C. and fashioned one heck of a piece of legislation for the people of this important state. Thank you, Governor, for your hard work.
You know, now that he is, post-governor, he likes to just say it's political recreation. That's what he does for a living, whatever that is.
For all his many accomplishments, party chairman, advisor, and office holder himself, I hope we never overlook what may be Haley's greatest achievement. As fierce a competitor as he was, I think his humor and goodwill left him on good terms with friend and foe alike. I hope tonight will, at least in part, honoring that, along with his many indisputable accomplishments. And my only question for the selection panel is, what took y'all so long?
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Haley Barbour. Thank y'all. Becky, you ought to move your booby trap here for us old people. Thank y'all for that fabulous video. It's a great honor for me to accept the AAPC's election to your Hall of Fame, and it's every bit as great an honor to be recognized by people like that in the video. When Jim Baker, the man who ran Washington, does part of the video, that's a real compliment. When you get to be on the program with Mandy Grunwald, that's a real compliment too. And she and I, we had never met before tonight, but I knew a bunch of her friends like James Carville, and I just thought what she said was so important for all of us to hear and for lots of other people to hear. So Mandy, thank you. I talked about Jim Baker. Ward Baker came to work in my 2003 campaign. He had only recently got out of the Marine Corps, and I believe it was only the second political campaign he'd ever worked in. Well, he ran my full field staff by the time the campaign was over. We referred to him, and I still do, as Ward the Warrior. Ward gets stuff done. Many of you know that I went to Ole Miss, but I doubt if many of you know, unless you were here at breakfast, how Ole Miss helped my political career. I'd grown up in a family full of lawyers, 5 generations, 9 lawyers from 5 generations who had their office on the same block, the same street, the same town since 1895. So obviously, I expect to go and practice law with my family. Lord didn't think that was what he wanted to turn out. So in the spring of 1968, I ran for president of the student body at Ole Miss. And I lost. Finished 3rd in a 4-man race. That same spring, my oldest brother, Jeppy, quit his job at the bank and ran for mayor of our little hometown, Yazoo City, Mississippi. Jeppy had come home from the Army in 1965 as a Goldwater Republican. So he went down to City Hall to file to run as a Republican and found out the Republicans didn't have a line on the ballot. Nobody had ever run for office in our little hometown as a Republican. So he had to run as an independent. Ran as an independent, beat the 20-year incumbent mayor, and went down and filed with the state Republican committee to be recognized as a Republican, even though he couldn't run as one. And then I thought that was over. But that summer, my brother got elected to the Republican State Committee. There were only 3 Republican mayors in Mississippi. My brother and 2 more, out of 200 and something mayors. We had no legislators, by the way. So Jeppy, my brother gets asked, get me to help him find some college boys, people who had just graduated, to work in the Nixon campaign. This was about July or August. Nixon won the nomination. So I called half a dozen of my friends, and they all had jobs, like you're supposed to when you graduate from college. And so, but that got my attention, and I realized I don't have to go back to college. I lost. And one of the great things that ever happened to me at Ole Miss, probably the second greatest except for my meeting and marrying my wife, Marcia, my wife of 50 plus years, the best thing that happened to me is I lost president of the student body, because it allowed me to run 30 counties for Nixon in the 1968 campaign. First time I ever saw a political poll in Mississippi, 6% of Mississippians identified as Republicans. The good news is we were running against George Wallace, who beat us like a rented mule, but instead of 6, we got 14. Wallace got 65. Hubert Humphrey got the rest. But Nixon lost Mississippi, but he became president, and that injected me into a lot of things that had to do with the government and with Republican politics. The next year, I got asked to be the state director of the census in Mississippi. I had 2,700 employees, 5 congressional district offices, I was 22 years old. My mother asked me when I was going to get a real job. But I did the census. It was a great experience for me. I started law school in the fall of 1970, dropped out twice for political campaigns. I am one of the few people that you know who has a law degree but doesn't have a bachelor's degree. It's a long story. So we have a great, as opposed to 68, a great 72. Nixon wins the state by a mile. But most important, we elect two young Republican congressmen to two empty, retiring Democrat seats. You may have heard of them, Thad Cochran and Trent Lott. And we built our party in the pre-Reagan era. We built our party around them. And it was Watergate, was not the problem in Mississippi. It was in some states. Cochran goes on to, he wins re-election. They both win re-election for 76. In 76, I had a kind of a crazy experience. I was chief of staff of the delegation. We went to Kansas City. As you recall, neither Ford nor Reagan had a sufficient number of delegates to be nominated when we got there. Mississippi had the largest group of undecided delegates because we put our delegation under the unit rule, and whoever got a majority got all the votes. So it was in our interest to delay that vote as long as possible so we'd stay important. And we stayed really important, which I didn't understand at the time, but really it made a huge difference in my career because the Reagan people, I was for Reagan, the Reagan people trusted me, and the Ford people trusted me. Harry Dent and Jim Baker trusted me just as much as Mike Deaver and Dave King. So when the convention was over and President Ford won the nomination, 3 days later I got a call from Stu Spencer, who asked me would I run part of the South for the election. Now, I've gone from trying to go home and practice law with my family to two congressmen being asked to run 7 states in a presidential campaign. But I asked Stu, are y'all going to try to win the South? Because it had been said by the campaign manager weeks before that they probably would write off the South against Carter. He said, no, we're not going to write off the South, and we're not going to write off Mississippi. And sure enough, the first big campaign event after Labor Day in 1976 was what we call the Great Riverboat Ride. President Ford came down the river on the steamboat Natchez, came from above New Orleans, down the river 2 or 3 stops, and we docked at Jackson Square, the cathedral, huge square in downtown New Orleans. It had a monster event. I mean, it was a huge event. We had several hundred big Republicans from around the South on the boat, including Edward Edwards' wife was on the boat. The next day, we made 6 stops on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in a motorcade and ended the day in New Orleans. So Spencer kept his word to me. We were going to try to carry some of the South. We lost Mississippi by less than 1 point, and we lost Louisiana by 2. But one of the things I learned with my law degree from Ole Miss, I was just as smart as those guys who went to Harvard and Princeton and Yale that I was working with around the campaign. It was a good experience for me. It was a good experience for them too. So it's over. I go back home and practice law. I thought. Very shortly, Senator Jim Eastland, who had planned to run for re-election, had cleared the field, including Congressman Thad Cochran, who we wanted to run against him. And Eastland got a Democrat opponent in the primary. He decided not to run. Cochran decided to run and asked me to chair his campaign. Thad won with 45% of the vote. In Mississippi, in federal elections for federal office, you don't have to get a majority. So he got 45%, and that started a career that ended not very long ago. But it was great for me because now, in addition to the party, I had Cochran telling people that I could be trusted, I could help them, blah, 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 blah. I had been the executive director of the state party during that period from 72 to 76, and that's what I was doing when Cochran won. But if I could read my handwriting, it would really make this go faster. After the Cochran the Cochran election, I worked for an independent committee in the 80 campaign, raising money in the South for President to be Reagan. And I mention that because it threw me into groups of people that I'd never met before. Big money Southerners who gave a lot of money and were they would give money to Republicans they knew were going to lose because they wanted to build the party in the South. And you think about Bill Haslam, great governor of Tennessee. His daddy was one of those. I can't tell you how much money the Haslams gave to people that had no damn chance in the world of winning. Then we sent them a Mississippi boy up there, and he got elected governor. So we always try to lend a helping hand. I actually ran for senator in '82. We wanted Trent Lott to run. He wasn't going to run against Stennis, John Stennis. So I ran against him, lost 60-40. But I'll have to tell you, it was a great experience for me in a lot of ways, Mandy. I saw what the candidates do for a living. I found out, at that time at least, most people are nice. Most people who have no intention of voting for you are nice. And it helped me be a better mentor to candidates as we went on down the line. My campaign slogan was a senator for the 80s, not a senator in his 80s. And worked pretty well. After '84, when Atwater asked me to be on the steering committee, Stu Spencer asked me again, would I be political director of the White House, which we've talked about. Look, it's heady stuff for a boy from Yazoo City, Mississippi, to work in Ronald Reagan's White House. And I can just tell you that. I wouldn't give anything for it. But the other thing that I didn't know until I got there, in the White House, you could be just as big as you want to be if you know how to behave and if you know how to be viewed as a problem solver. And I can remember Ronald Reagan inviting me to a cabinet meeting because somebody had told him that I had some ideas about agriculture. I don't know if you remember 1985 and 6 when I was political director at the White House. Agriculture and oil both collapsed. We had $10 oil. I think it closed today at 126. $10 oil. And we were in South Dakota campaigning, and Governor Janklow and I were sitting in the presidential limousine as we went by the crowd, and Janklow said to the president, "Hey, Mr. President, they're waving to you, and not all of them with just one finger." And Reagan had a good sense of humor about that sort of stuff, but I did get asked to do more than just kind of what the political officer usually does. My boss is Mitch Daniels, as y'all saw right there. Smartest guy, except for Baker, that I've ever worked for. But Mitch used to say the toughest job he ever had in politics was approving my expense account. And I never was insulted by that. I left the White House after the 86 election. By the way, in the 86 election, the Republicans lost 8 senators, and we gained 8 governors. That day, unheard of today, 12 states voted for a governor of one party and a senator of the other party. And since Reagan was a former governor, he was just pleased. He liked the idea of having more governors. I went back to my lobbying firm, or I actually started in 87. But in 88, Baker asked me if I would be his overseer in the Illinois campaign, because Bush was down 6 late in the summer. And a story that I enjoy. I got there, and Jim Thompson was running the campaign, the governor, Sam Skinner, Greg Bays, a bunch of very talented people. But we had this problem with women. And one of the guys came up with what turned out to be a pretty cute ad. 2 pages, front and back. On one page was a photograph of John Wayne Gacy, the mass murderer who murdered 35 children. And the cut line was, if John Wayne Gacy had committed his heinous crimes in Massachusetts instead of Illinois, he would have been eligible for Dukakis furlough program. I thought, this is good stuff. So we sent it out to 800,000 households headed by women. Mandy, you may remember, Dukakis held it up on television. I thought, how lucky can I get? Held it up on television. Ms. Bush wasn't so happy about it. She was driving Baker crazy. Baker called me into the office, and I said, look, I did it. If anybody to blame, it's me. You know, he said, look, you go out there and tell everybody you thought I was going to fire you, but don't do it again. So I've always appreciated Baker's let me do that. If he'd have known I was going to do it, it might have been different, but the way it worked out. The Bush lost in 92. I would never have been party chairman, as I said this morning, when we had the presidency, because the party chairman works for the White House. So Bush lost, I ran for party chairman, and that started 93. We had a great year in 93, spectacular year in 94. Controlled both houses of Congress for the first time in 40 years, and you saw some of the people responsible for that up there on the screen: Scott Reed, Jim Perry, Kurt Anderson. We had a great group. Bill Clinton was president, and I don't think Mandy would be surprised that James Carville and I are very good friends. He's got a little bit of an accent, but so in my 4 years as chairman, we kept both houses of Congress, and we elected in aggregate over 30 governors. And to Clinton's credit, we passed welfare reform that he signed the third time we passed it. And we had the first balanced budget since 1969. So don't think the divided government you can't get something done, because Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton both proved you can if you got the right attitude and you're willing to work on it. I never thought I would go home and run for governor. I should say I live in Yazoo City, Mississippi, where my wife and I lived, where we raised our children. And when I've worked up here, I kind of commute. But after I went back to the firm in the late 90s, I started getting a lot of pressure because a Democrat had come. We'd had our first Republican governor since Reconstruction. He won 2 terms and you're out. And the guy we ran lost. So I started getting pressure to run for governor. You know, and I had told the guys, when I'm 55, I'm going to start thinking about retiring. Well, when I was 55, I started thinking about running for governor. And so I did run for governor. I'm sorry that Ed Goez is not here, who was my pollster. I know he's on the board of the organization and all that. I started off behind double digits, won by 7 points. And I ran on tort reform, a balanced budget. Our budget was badly out of balance. And workforce development, skills training. The Wall Street Journal called what we passed the most comprehensive tort reform passed by any state at one time. And it's still in effect, and it's been hugely successful. We balanced the budget in 2 years to get back to a balanced budget. But then in August of 2005, we got hit by Katrina. And we bore the brunt of the worst natural disaster in American history. I remember flying over the coast Tuesday morning after the storm on Monday in a helicopter, and it looked like the hand of God had wiped away the coast. People on the coast invented a new verb. We've been slabbed, meaning there was nothing left of their house but slab. About 40,000 of those. I don't want to say anything bad about Louisiana. What happened to them was terrible, but it was different from us. We bore the brunt of the storm surge and the 140-mile-an-hour winds. They had levees to break. And God, that's awful. You know, when you have levees that are protected, and New Orleans was almost all underwater. But it wasn't obliterated. And I will always be grateful for the people that came down there and helped us. We had nearly 500,000 volunteers in 4 years who came and registered with some organization. Nearly 500,000. The Republican governors, I was elected in 2003. They elected me chairman in 2009 and 10. And just as we had over 30 Republican governors after the 96 election, we had over 30 Republican governors after the 2010 election, which are, both of them were pretty well high points for Republicans in the post-World War II era. I tell you my story about how I got to do this to make very plain one thing. Don't think you can't do this too. I'm as much an accident as anybody who's ever been in politics, for time and time and time again, I would get to a choosing point and the good Lord would tell me, go to work for Jim Baker, go to work for Stu Spencer, run against Stennis, it ain't gonna hurt you. Y'all have got a lot of young people that work for you who need to understand that. Mandy was so right. This is important. This is something that you can do that makes a difference for your children and your grandchildren. And Lord knows, I think about Alex and stuff we did together and campaigns we did together. Teeter was always Cochran's pollster. And my closing point is this. I'm a Republican, but I'm an American first. I'm a conservative, but I'm an American first. And you need to take these great young people that are driven to politics. Many of them are driven to politics. Make it where they love it because they understand how important it is. And it is important. I will close with one not quite as bipartisan a thought, that I'm super honored to get this, and I'm super honored to get it this year because I got a feeling this year is going to be like 1994 and 2010, and then I'll have to get plenty of bourbon to get me through the first night. Thank y'all.
Stay right here for a second. Thank you, everybody. Could I ask Mandy and Caller to come back up here and just take a few more pictures? You all are released. We'll see you in the morning. Those people staying for the Hall of Fame Awards dinner, it's downstairs. We'll see you down there in a minute. Caller. I was with you almost.